What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and we're diving into another wide receiver from Steve Smith Sr.'s top 10 list for the 2025 NFL draft class. And today we have TCU's Jack Bech on the radar. And to be honest, this may low-key be one of my favorite wide receivers in terms of potential day two projections. And a lot of it has to go against it surrounds the mental fortitude of a player, right? What he's been through, what he's able to overcome, really tends to vibe with me pretty strongly, right? Having a kind of an uphill climb personally as well in terms of trying to find a level of success at whatever it is you're looking at, right? So all in all, from a mental standpoint, I have literally zero questions about what he would be able to accomplish and adapt to when it comes to the NFL. And to be honest, we've seen a ton of athletic freaks and phenoms out there that everything points to these guys should be an elite prospect, and they haven't been able to overcome some of those mental hurdles and things, right? So it's definitely a key component of evaluating any prospect, and that could kick us off into our first point here with Jack Bech. His brother, Tiger Bech, ended up being killed in a terrorist attack in New Orleans on New Year's Day. And it really was a quick turnaround with everything going on, right? He ended up having a Senior Bowl invite. And after attending the Senior Bowl, he won the MVP on a 6-catch, I believe 68-yard performance with I want to say it was the game-winning touchdown, and he wore number 7, I believe it was, in commemoration of his brother. But you think about, like, DJ Reed is one of the names that stand out in recent memory when we heard the story about his father passing and seeing how he played, I believe it was that week 1 game against the Bills. So stuff like that really tends to stick out and kind of stay in my brain for a bit. And you can easily give him an out, right, about not needing to care about football, not wanting to have anything to do with it in the midst of this significant family drama. But I was glad to see him rise to the occasion and look like a dominant wide receiver at that event, where really you put all the stats and everything to the side and you just have to applaud the man on being able to go out there and put up a significant performance when he could have just looked to kind of take it easy and coast or fade into the background, and nobody would have really even questioned, maybe the lack of performance there, right? But with that said, 6'1" and 214 pounds is going to be one of the more stockier guys that you see coming out here. Interestingly enough, though, he's really spent the first 3 years of his collegiate career lining up in the slot, and then his 4th year with TCU, or I guess technically his 2nd year with TCU, but as a senior, was really when he was able to break out more onto the perimeter and kind of get some opportunities across the formation. But this is a former 4-star tight end recruit. He actually has a former basketball background as well, but his high school stats and accolades are insane, winning multiple championships, not only on the gridiron, but on the basketball court as well. And he had offers galore before eventually deciding LSU was going to be his initial home, and then he ended up switching over to TCU. But he led LSU in receptions as a freshman, which it was an easy track record to think that he was just going to be putting up insane numbers from that point moving on. But he ended up taking a back seat as they retooled some things over there and really didn't get much playing time, which led to the transition with TCU. The big question mark with him is, yes, you love the initial freshman, stat lines that he put up and kind of what he produced on film. But really, he took 2 backseat years between that 2nd year at LSU and his initial year at TCU before breaking out his senior year. And he ended up putting up 62 receptions for 1,034 yards and 9 touchdowns, which is relatively hard to do in an offense like TCU and like offenses like Georgia Tech, where it's going to be kind of run heavy, it's going to be option heavy, kind of have that dual threat quarterback situation that's going on where they tend to rely a little bit more on the legs than they do the passing ability, for instance. And he also had another freak of nature in Savion Williams across from him that would dwarf many other people generally in the same wide receiver room. So With that said, something to keep in mind about if we will see a level of consistency from him when he hits the NFL and kind of end up being that better pro than collegiate player based on what you're able to see on tape with him. But critical converter of third and fourth downs. I think this is really what you draw out from all 4 years of him playing. Quarterbacks were very comfortable when it was third and short, third and medium, third and long even. Same thing with fourth down. When you had to have it, Jack Bech was the guy that you were looking for because you knew that he was going to bring the physicality. He was going to look to dominate the airspace. He was going to look to make sure he came down with that catch. And he was going to be at the right space at the right time when needed. So seeing that he used to be a former tight end really kind of makes sense in terms of the play style that you see out of Jack Bech, where he really becomes that quarterback's best friend. And so you can kind of use him as that power slot, if you will, and he definitely brings the mentality for it. A team that really, so when I kind of look at what he does and what maybe works against him, right? I look at teams that will utilize heavy play action and will look to target him ideally in that first and second level, so short to intermediate. Those are probably going to be the teams that look at Jack Bech and say this is a guy that we look at more favorably than some other guys that are out there based on his ability, and that could work perfect for the Jets and what they will look for in a partner for Garrett Wilson. And while technically I think Jack Bech walks in as a high-level floor player, he's probably, you're talking about a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 type guy maybe in the first year or two with potential wide receiver 2 upside. I don't think he'll ever be the top option in somebody's offense, but if you look at the Jets and you feel like we're going to be rushing 400 to 500 times and we're going to be passing less than what we've seen in years past, then Jack Bech definitely kind of moves up the big board, if you will, for the Jets. Now, one of the things that are going to be a lovable number for Jack Bech is he dropped just 4 career passes in 133 receptions for himself, has a 65% catch rate. This is a guy that is bringing sure hands, right? And so one of the things I try to pay attention to is, as I've talked to my boy like Gunny in previous drafts, as Dom C has come on and he's talked to me about previous guys in the past for like the 2024 draft, I keep in mind just kind of, I guess, legacy situations that go on as well. You take a look at Alabama and like their quarterback transitions to the NFL, for example. TCU and their wide receivers hasn't really been a thing. So, for example, some of the last top guys to come out of that program for him, Josh Doxson, Quentin Johnston, and Jalen Reagor. None of those guys you look at and you'd say, wow, we absolutely needed to have him, right? In Jalen Reagor's case, he probably has the saddest story because he went ahead of Justin Jefferson. So not that there was an added element of pressure, I guess, but you hate to be the wide receiver that's talked about as being one of the guys that definitely should have been behind, a generational type player. But it is what it is, just something that's food for thought here. Now, what we want to hear, some of the pros about his game. He wins with physicality, and generally you see it at like the top of his routes. He has a ton of very veteran savvy moves where there's borderline, push off situations, or he's positioning himself in just the right area to where a cornerback can't even, or let's just call it DB, right? A DB can't really try to make a move to throw him off his game per se. So I absolutely love that component, right? I think physical players, especially on the offensive side of the ball, tend to be able to not only withstand the test of time, but they also generally have better breakouts, in my opinion, or again, the floor for them tends to be a little bit better because the worst thing I imagine if you're a defensive guy, and again, playing DB myself back in the day, a guy that kind of wants to punch back is not ideal, right? Not to say that it'll throw you off your game, but if you are one of those defensive guys that kind of turn into another player, this is a guy that over the course of the game can really kind of wear you down. He looks to own the airspace. So Jack Bech is a guy that he's not jumping out the building. He's not, flying through the air or anything crazy, but you can definitely see the basketball skills in strong display when it comes to being able to just body a guy up, square him up, and then make sure that you are in prime position to be the only person that can get that ball. And it's going to take divine intervention for somebody to get in the way of that. So I love it. Not only that, he brings an elite catch focus. Again, thinking about his time at the Senior Bowl, for example, you can take a look at some strong plays that he's made over the course of his career. I don't believe it was Old Dominion, but UCF was a huge game for him, for example, went over 200 yards. There's another one that comes to mind as well, but I can't think about who the team is right now. But nonetheless, again, his calling card has always been a guy that can convert on third or fourth down. So huge plus. He doesn't really allow defenders into his frame. And again, this is all kind of veteran savvy stuff where he's not giving the DB even the opportunity to go in, try to get inside of the chest plate or get that interior positioning to where they can cut routes off. He flashes hands late at the catch point. There's a number of wide receivers in this draft class that actually do a really good job of not being able to telegraph a pass coming in super early so that a DB has time to turn his hands around or try to get his hands within the catch radius of where the hands are going to be. It's very a last second movement kind of eye-hand coordination reaction time thing for him that he feels like it kind of feels like he has that mastered. Understands limitations, and I feel like when you see him run his routes, he moves accordingly, right? One of the things that stands out to me is he has kind of this jab, rocker step type situation that he puts on like fade routes, for example. Very nimble, very... I don't want to say sudden is the word, but it's just kind of a routine thing for him that as you see it, you almost will kind of miss it, for example. And probably not something a DB will pick up, but it's something where you can kind of see that they bit for a little bit, which just gives him that little bit of extra space. Contact balance and strength. Not that he turns into a running back, but this is a guy that just understands that he could probably go right through you, right? And even if it's not being able to break off a 65-yard chunk play, this is a guy that says, I can turn these 2 to 3 yard extra gains into 5, 7, 10-yard extra games as the game goes on because every time I catch the ball and you're near me, I'm looking to go straight through the face mask. He provides a clear target versus zone coverage. I think this is another plus to him where he knows how to settle down into those soft spots. And he needs some work on press coverage, which we'll talk about ever so slightly. But he does show some ability to hand counter at the line of scrimmage against some of these DBs here. I feel like the knock on Jack Bech is really going to come down to athleticism, right? If this was a guy that would have ran a faster 40, if he would have jumped a little bit higher, if he would have had a little bit better 3-cone, something like that, you would be talking about him as a surefire first round guy. And there's even still some whispers, right, that he could be like a 28 to 32 range type guy, something like that. But overall, he's not going to be a great separator. He does need to improve versus press coverage. His ability to swipe or power through some hand fighting at the line of scrimmage works, but because he's not explosive, because he doesn't have burst, because he doesn't have long speed or anything, any extra seconds that you're wasting at the line of scrimmage is going to be something that works against him and his ability to find an opening right away. Physicality when catching the ball is a plus for him, but you don't see that same distinction with him as a run blocker per se. And I think a lot of it comes down to technique more than anything. He's just a ferocious guy by nature, so you can definitely see him get in there, but he doesn't necessarily play blocks through the whistle. And then again, I don't think the same level of physicality that you see when he's running his routes or fighting for the catch. It's the same thing you see at run blocking, but he has all the prerequisites you need to be a plus guy there. Lacks burst on route breaks. Is going to be across the board for everything, which is why I say he's probably going to be a first, second level guy, while maybe getting a shot here or there, right, throughout the course of a season. And doesn't really lack the start-stop ability. So again, everything is going to be really nuanced with him. It's going to be more so how can I be the most efficient getting from point A to point B, right? He's not going to wow you with displays of crazy agility or anything like that, which is why when I look at him, I think at the best, right, you're probably looking at a guy, if he could figure it out, like Anquan Bolden, a guy that didn't have all of these elite traits either, but he had a lot of the same physicality, the vice grips for hands, the ability to go out there and snag things out the air, and he did it all without being able to beat guys out from a speed component, without being able to go out there and just out jump everybody. But outside of that, I think Cedric Tillman, maybe a poor man's Puka Nakua, kind of fits the mold here as well. But let me know what you guys think. Again, this is probably my sneaky favorite in terms of a day two guy that I hope we could give a serious look at. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you again. Peace.